Okay, everyone, it sounds like we've got our technical issues figured out. Really appreciate the 5 of you who stuck around, even though I told you that we probably were gonna have to bail if that last one didn't work. And then we're just gonna go ahead and dive right back in. So to all of you watching tonight on Monday or Thursday, rather, March 7th, and to any of you watching this recorded after the fact on the city website, my name is Ryan Haig. I'm the project manager for the Main Street Overlay Project. And we have Oscar Antion here tonight. This is the Director of Public Works. Oscar, do you want to reintroduce yourself really quick?
Thank you. I don't want to take too much time. So I appreciate those who are able to join us tonight. And let's not jinx it. Ryan, go for it.
All right. I'm all about not jinxing it. So without any further ado, I also have Rob English, city engineer, here with me. Maybe he'll pop in and wave a little bit later should we have a question that needs his attention. We're gonna go back to the Title VI Act paperwork that we were talking about earlier. I'm gonna go ahead here in just a moment and pop a poll up on your screens. And so this poll should be appearing on your screen right now. If you could answer these questions for us, please, we would really appreciate it. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act wants us to make sure that all federally assisted programs, and part of this project is federally assisted, are administered without discrimination. So any responses you have to this poll are going to help us make sure that we're meeting all different types of groups. It's just some demographic data, and we're just trying to ensure equitable access and treatment for all members of our community here. Big part of Title VI is folks with limited English proficiency. So maybe you're here tonight representing a friend or loved one who doesn't speak English as their first language. Maybe they want you to provide this information for them. Please let those people know that we have English language services here at the City of Edmonds. So they are free to contact us and learn about the project directly from us, rather than having to have you serve as an intermediary. So looks like 4 of our 5 participants got that. I'll give this last person just a couple minutes, or just another minute or so, and then we'll go ahead and keep moving. All right, thank you so much to everyone who submitted the poll numbers. Looks like we have a late arrival. But we're just gonna go ahead and dive right in because I feel like we've taken up enough of everyone's time this evening. So let's go back to the screen share, and let's go ahead and keep going. So this is the area that we're going to be talking about. This is Main Street from 6th to 9th, and you're going to see that this project is showing up in 2 different colors on your screen. This is 2 different pots of funding, 2 different projects. We'll talk a little bit more about that as the evening goes on. But again, Main from 6th to 9th is a big part of our downtown corridor. The portion from 6th to 8th is being partially funded by a federal grant that we won all the way back in 2020. And the purpose of that grant was to help us pave and to help us install ADA compliant ramps and bulb outs. And we'll talk a little bit more about what ADA compliance means and what bulb outs mean. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. And then Main Street from 8th to 9th is overlay work that we added to the city's annual pavement preservation program. This is a locally funded project, so this is technically happening in 2 projects. Main Street itself, this was identified in the 2017 Comprehensive Transportation Plan as a minor arterial, and it's also identified as a bike route that goes from the ferry all the way to 5 Corners. It has an average daily traffic of somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,900 vehicles per day. and that average is, of course, average. So some days are busier than others. And among those vehicles, we see community transit buses. There's some bus stops there. There's some transit routes. Right now, the 116 is running on that stretch. There's some existing bus stops. Future routes are coming, and I believe that the 116 is going to get canceled as part of that. But it will continue to be a very important route for our community transit buses. 40, that's the number that this was given on what's called the Pavement Condition Index. And the Pavement Condition Index is an industry standard way of rating pavement. It goes from 1 to 100, and different numbers get different word values. Like a 40, if you just hear that, you don't know what it means. So like 85 to 100 is excellent, 70 to 85 is pretty good, 40 is listed as poor. So this is what kicked off all of this. This is why we applied for this grant, is because we knew that we had some failing pavement out there on Main, and surely I don't have to tell anyone in this group. And that number actually was recorded before all the utility work that left that bumpy trench in the road. So we're going to be bringing some very, very nice, smooth new pavement to Main Street after we come here. There's a lot of ramps out there that are non-compliant, and what a ramp is I try to not assume that everyone knows everything about roadway design, of course. The ramps are what get you from the sidewalk down to the street, and the ADA, or Americans with Disability Act, requires that these ramps all meet certain guidelines, and none of the ramps out there currently meet those guidelines. And after we're done, they will all be meeting those guidelines, so we can make sure that we're serving our users of different abilities. And you also know that currently there's parking on both sides of Main Street, and after we're done, there's going to be parking on both sides of Main Street that is not going to be impacted at all. Moving along, I want to talk a little bit about complete streets. All the way back in 2011, City Council gave wrote a complete streets ordinance. It passed. Did you pass an ordinance? They passed the complete streets ordinance, and it's now actually part of our municipal code. And as loath as I am to do so, I'm going to read directly from the slide. I hate it when people do this, but I think that these words are important, because the complete streets ordinance says that the city of Edmonds will plan for, design, and construct all new transportation projects to provide appropriate accommodation for pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, and persons of all abilities. So when we pave a street and stripe it back to include bike lanes, we are following this direction that has come directly from the City Council. So what is a complete street? I want to talk about what does that even mean? What does it look like? And we've got this image from the FHWA that shows a lot of the various components of a complete street all in one place. So let's highlight some of those and talk about them really quick. First, of course, we have sidewalks. I don't think sidewalks are groundbreaking technology, but they are important. This makes sure that pedestrians have a place to get where they need to go safely, effectively, accessibly. That's also important. We want to make sure folks in wheelchairs, folks with walkers can get where they're going. Sidewalks are one of your basic building blocks of a complete street. Bike lanes, again, we're providing designated places for different types of users, and the bike lanes are one of these spaces that are designated for bicyclists. Motorists, we've highlighted the transit bus here, but motorists, transit, they all have a place on a complete street too. And so we want to make sure that we're not completely neglecting our vehicular traffic. Crosswalks. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of things that we're going to talk about tonight when it comes to promoting safety, to building community, is really designing things that catch motorist attention. We want the driver to be paying attention, and one of the ways that we call a driver's attention to places where pedestrians might be crossing is, of course, crosswalk. And then we've got the landscaping strip, and we're not going to be installing any new landscaping strips as part of this project, but any users of the road will know that oh, wow, the landscaping strip disappeared. Fascinating. Regardless, any users of this road know that we already have a nice little landscaping strip there in front of the library, kind of along the south side of Maine, and that landscaping strip is going to stay. We're not going to be changing anything there as part of this project. So all of these things come together to make sure that we can accommodate all users, and we're going to promote safety and wellness and community. And how are we going to do those things? We're going to promote safety. A big part of how we're going to do this is with designated spaces for all users. That's one of the things where we're going to hear a lot about tonight repeatedly, is making sure different users have designated spaces. Wellness, we're going to promote wellness, and environmental benefits are really part of wellness, because we can only really be well if we're living in a clean environment. And so we're going to encourage physical activity. We're going to encourage green transportation through walking and biking. Let's say you want to go down to the arts festival or the Taste, and you'd rather take your bike and not have to drive around all day hunting for parking and end up walking a mile anyway because you had to park really far away. Well, you just exercised and you saved some carbon emissions, and those are the sorts of things that we want to encourage. Promote a vibrant and inclusive community. When you turn onto a road as a motorist and you see giant wide lanes and just like a huge expanse of pavement that's just for you, you know that you're not planning to see pedestrians there. You're not expecting any cyclists, and you expect to have that road. And many motorists tend to push in a little bit further on that gas pedal in situations like this. And these are the sort of things that are the antithesis of vibrant community. And so when you turn onto a road that looks more like the one that I showed in that last slide, you know you're in a place where people live and where people recreate and where people shop or go to the Francis or go to the library. And that's what we want, is a public space that's inviting and that's accessible for all users. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what Main Street looks like today. This is a little mock-up of what we see out there today. So we've got a couple of 8-foot parking lanes and a couple of giant 14-foot travel lanes. And I'm a roadway designer. I know how big a 14-foot travel lane is. The average user, that might not necessarily mean a whole heck of a lot. So to put that in perspective, semi-trailers driving down I-5 right this very moment at 70, 80 miles an hour are driving on 12-foot travel lanes. And so a 14-foot travel lane is dramatically oversized for an urban area. And what we want is to narrow things up and make sure that motorists know that they're in a place that's for people to live in, rather than for them to floor the gas pedal. So this is what we're proposing our Main Street to look like after we're done. This is looking east up the hill. So on your right is where the library would be, is where the Francis would be. That should help you orient yourself. We're going to have a couple of parking lanes still. Can't reiterate that enough. No parking is going away as part of this project. That 11-foot travel lane on the right side of your screen with the little silver minivan looking thing, or maybe that's an SUV, that is an 11-foot lane, which is an industry standard minimum lane for a road like this. And then right next to it, we've got that new bike lane to make sure that those uphill cyclists have a safe place to do their thing and get where they're going. Again, parking on both sides. The downhill lane, you will notice, is a little bit wider, and that's a shared lane. And we're not going to install a downhill bike lane on this. And a big part of that is because, as you see, like, this section is full. And in order to install a downhill bike lane, we would have to eliminate parking, which was a non-starter from day one. Many of us live in this community. We all work here, and we know that this is a place where people need to park. But we're also engineers. Like, we're data-driven people. We're data-driven animals in this building. And so just to make sure that we weren't encountering any sort of implicit bias, we absolutely did perform a parking study over the course of a week. We went out there multiple times a day, all hours, including weekends, and proved what we already knew that people absolutely need to park on Main Street. So talk a little bit about curb bulb outs because this is a phrase that maybe not everyone's heard a whole heck of a lot, or maybe they've heard and don't really know what it looks like. And we will take a look at a curb bulb out on our next slide. So what they do is they improve safety for pedestrians in addition to making them more visible to motorists. And how are we doing that? A bulb out kind of does what it sounds like. It bulbs out into the road a little bit. And when a motorist is driving on a street that has bulb outs, they see this infrastructure sort of pushing out into their space. And that tells the motorist, I need to be on the lookout here because this is the sort of place where people cross. And that's what we want, is because anytime we make the motorist anytime we make the motorist a little bit more aware, make sure they're keeping their wits about them, we make everyone around them safer. And then we're also going to install a new accessible ramp. Again, we're coming back to accessibility, making sure folks, and this is specifically for folks in wheelchairs, can get where they need to go. Right now, we've got a ramp up to the Francis Anderson Center, and we have a couple of accessible parking spots in front of the Francis Anderson Center, but we don't have a way to get those users from the parking spots up to the ramp, at least the door. So we're going to upgrade that as well. So moving along, what does a curb bulb out look like? Fortunately for all of us, we already have curb bulb outs at 6th and Main. These are the existing bulb outs. You can look up the hill on the right side of your screen. You can look left going down 6th, sort of on the bottom, like left quadrant of your screen, and you can really see where that bulb out sort of pushes out into the motorist line of sight. And that's what we want. We want this to tell the motorist, you need to be keeping an eye out here. So we've got one proposed for 7th and Main. This is our design drawing. And you can see down there at the bottom of your screen, 7th and Main, the existing, already has a bulb out. So we're just going to sort of maintain what's there and bring those ramps up to code. And then 8th and Main, again, we've got these bulb outs. This is going to be protecting on the northwest corner anyone who knows this area. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up street view on this. Let me, because I want to make sure everyone sees what we're looking at here. So this is a very large, very beautiful tree here at the northwest corner of 8th and Main. Anyone who uses Main knows this tree. It's gorgeous. It provides a lot of shade. And then if you look here, if we reconstruct that sidewalk in the same spot it already is, that tree, I'm afraid, is toast. So we don't want that. We want to save that tree. And to that end, we're going to build that bulb out there on that northwest corner a little bit differently. We're going to make sure the back of the sidewalk is pulled as far from that tree as possible, so we protect those roots, protect that beautiful tree, and hopefully future generations can enjoy it just like we do. So we talk about bike lanes a lot, and we get a lot of the same questions, and I want to discuss some of those questions that we've gotten over the years and some answers. So are the lanes going to be too narrow? And we already sort of discussed this a little bit. All the lanes are going to be meeting industry minimum standards. That 13-foot downhill shared lane, it's actually only about a foot narrower than the existing lane. There has been talk about making that an 11-foot lane with a buffer on the car side, because I know cyclists do worry about that swinging car door. At some point in the future, that could be a possibility if we find it's necessary. But during our conversations with the Edmonds Bicycle Group, they seem to think that the 13-foot shared lane would be adequate. So what about vehicles trying to turn? I mean, we're putting these giant these bulb outs out in the middle of the road, right? How are we going to make sure that vehicles can turn? Well, we have software, we have modeling software that enables us to simulate a turning vehicle. And this software comes with dozens of different vehicles that you can use. And we we chose parcel delivery vehicles. So think about like your UPS truck, your FedEx truck. Those are the largest vehicles that are going to be making this turn on the reg. And we want to make sure that they're going to be making the turns. And so we modeled and made sure that they're going to be able to get where they need to go. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we do have some buses on this. And anywhere that we had a bus making a turn, we did model that as well to make sure that they're going to be able to get where they need to go. What about the quantity of traffic? I mean, we talked earlier about the 4,900 vehicles per day that are taking Main Street. That's a lot of traffic. Isn't that too busy for a bike lane? Well, 76th Avenue and 220th have both had bike lanes quite successfully for a number of years now, and those carry, depending on which road you're on, depending on where you are, anywhere from 50 to 100% more traffic than this stretch that we're looking at right now. So this is absolutely a proven concept. It's been done before, and even with large amounts of traffic, it can work. Why do we need bike lanes on Main when there are no bicyclists? And this is the very definition of a chicken and the egg question, because the answer to this is, of course, the question, why would I ride my bike on Main when there are no bike lanes? And the bottom line is many cyclists just don't feel very safe riding in traffic. Personally, I am a cyclist. I'm not a very good one. I'm bad. I'm not very confident. I'm not very strong. And I'm not riding my bike up Main right now because I'm not going to go very fast. And vehicles are going to get antsy. They're going to line up behind me. They're going to try to go around me when it's not safe to. They're going to cut me off. We seek to eliminate all of these problems by installing an uphill bike lane. And then additionally, this is somewhat of a proven concept. We have seen it in the past where installing bike lanes increases ridership. So there is absolutely a chicken and the egg question going on here. What about the hills? There's a lot of hills in Edmonds, and aren't we too steep for bike lanes? And up until a few years ago, I think that this was a reasonably compelling argument, because other than the really, really hardcore bicyclists, it just didn't feel like most of us were going to be able to ride our bikes around here. But e-bikes have changed the game, and they are continuing to do so. They're becoming more common by the day. According to a recent market research study, the total value of e-bike sales more than tripled from 2019 to 2022, and I've seen projections indicating that it could go as high as $1 billion per year within just 3 or 4 years. There's just no stopping the e-bike sales. The e-bikes are coming, whether we're ready for them or not, and we're going to make sure that we are here in Edmonds. And this last question, I promise you I've gotten it arrived in my email just the other day. Isn't Edmonds too old for bike lanes? Complete streets, and we talked about that a lot earlier, requires that infrastructure be considerate of all age and ability groups. We're not going to just design our streets for any one age group. We want to make sure that folks who have disabilities can use our roads just as much as the highly able. Moving along to talk about our project timeline, and just a quick reminder, we do have 2 different projects here, so they're not necessarily going to go at the same time, but we do expect design on both of them to wrap up sometime this spring. Construction should begin in the summer. I expect that the 8th and 9th portion, the 8th and 9th portion is a little bit further ahead than the 6th to 8th portion. I expect that maybe to be early summer and the 6th to 8th to be later in the summer. Obviously, as construction schedules tend to be, they're going to be a little bit volatile. And we expect that construction to wrap up sometime in the fall. We should have all our nice, big, brand new facilities. And one thing to note, I feel like a lot of you may be balking because we all know how busy the festival season is around here during the summer. We've got, just to name a few, we've got the Taste, of course, we've got the Arts Festival, we've got Oktoberfest, there's fun runs, there's events at the Civic, and then there's people just trying to add stuff all the time. So we have worked closely with the Parks Department to make sure that all of these festivals are written into our construction contract, and the contractor will be required to break down and clean up anytime one of those festivals is coming to town, so that we can make sure that we accommodate those users. If you want to provide comments, let's say you don't get to speak tonight for whatever reason, or maybe you just didn't think of something until later, shoot us an email, overlays@edmondswa.gov. This is an email address specifically for our overlay projects. Comments that are received here are going to be provided for City Council when we go back to talk to them about this project next month. So it's not just us that are going to be seeing those comments. Those comments will be bundled up and provided for council. Additionally, you can track the project at edmondswa.gov/overlays. Many of you would have used that site to get here in the first place. They're going to be familiar with it. And additionally, call me. In case you haven't noticed, I like talking. I feel like I'm kind of good at it, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about the project, answer any questions you might have. The other members of my team are available as well. So without any further ado, Rob, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Okay. We have come to the obligatory question slide, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And for those of you who have not used Zoom in the past, you do have the ability to raise your hand using your control panel up there. So if you raise your hand, I will see it here, and I will be able to call on you and hopefully get your questions answered. While we're giving folks a chance to raise their hands, Bertrand, do you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. And you can use that chat function as, I think you can use that. Oh, here we go. We have a question from Laura. All right, Laura, how can we help you this evening?
Hi, thanks for taking time to take questions at the end. I live between 7th and 8th on Main Street.
Okay.
And I appreciate you providing the feet measurements that are current and what the plan is.
Yeah.
I'm curious if my biggest concern when I heard about this was the narrowing of the lanes. And I'm curious what the measurements are for the street between 5th and 6th, because that feels very narrow. And my concern is that that's what we will become. And I guess I'm more concerned when I hear about buses coming on the street, which I think is great. We need more public transportation to get us around. But if we're having larger vehicles coming through and a narrowing of the road, I just was curious if we have a plan for that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna pull up my GIS right now and dive in to the aerials. I don't know those measurements off the top of my head, but I can get those rather quickly. And then the lanes are all going to be industry standard. Like these are all lanes that are designed for bus traffic. So it's not anything unusually narrow that we're proposing.
Do you know the space that I'm talking about where the sidewalks got widened so the road got more narrow?
I do. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
diving in right now.
Okay.
Give me just a moment.
And Ryan, I believe those are 11-foot lanes.
Those are 11-foot lanes. Yep, I confirmed that at the exact moment you asked. Are you piped in? Yep. Yeah, we have 11-foot lanes right there. So your downhill again is going to be 13 foot, which is almost as wide as the existing, and your uphill is going to be 11 foot.
Thank you.
Yes. Give me just a moment. I've got a lot of windows open here. Okay. And does anyone else want to raise their hand? Do we have any other questions? All right, we have a question from Chris Kosu, I'm sorry. My apologies. How can we help you tonight, Chris?
Hey, thank you again also for hosting this. We really appreciate all the backstory of how this came to be and the funding mechanisms. My question I did put in the chat is that when you were repainting the parking areas, is there a plan to keep and maintain those markers that show the front and back of each intended space? I do really enjoy those, and I was wanting to just make sure we're gonna have those again when they restripe.
Yeah, I think all users of those parking spots enjoy those, myself included, and we are absolutely going to have those back after we're done. Those was kind of a pilot project when we started, wasn't it? And then it was so successful that we've spread them around town. So yeah, those are absolutely going to be coming back. And we're really glad to hear that you, as a user, are having a positive experience with them. And we have noticed that they definitely make parking down there a lot more consistent.
Thank you. Yes, most people respect the lights. Are we also going to be seeing a net loss of any spaces because of the bulb outs by chance, like maybe one or two?
We will absolutely not see any loss of parking spots. I'm trying to figure out how to disseminate this information without boring you to tears, but essentially the average spot that is in the middle, you have your bank of spots, right? And the average spot that's in the middle, they all have to be 20 feet long. On the ends, you have some leeway because when you're pulling into the first spot or the last spot, you've got room to play with. You know, you're not necessarily trying to avoid two other cars. And so those spots can be narrower, they can be shorter. And so we are going to shorten a couple of those end spots, but they're still absolutely going to be usable. They're still going to be within industry accepted standards. I think they're all going to be above minimum even. So that's how we were able to install the new bulb outs without losing a single parking spot.
Thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. It looks like Laura.
Thanks for considering one more question.
Yeah, of course.
Our neighborhood has petitioned for traffic calming for a couple of years, and
Okay.
I'm curious if you feel for the concerning crosswalk being on 8th, and wondering if the bulb outs is the extent of the traffic calming that might happen at that intersection, or if there might be any additional steps that could happen since given the streets being torn up and reconfigured.
Yeah, absolutely. Bertrand, are you able to speak to that?
Well, yeah, we can. I mean, yeah, definitely. Like Ryan said, the boba is definitely going to decrease your speeds. If you still have some speeding concerns following the installation, we definitely take a closer look at that stretch, do some additional speed studies, and see if there's also some other pedestrian improvements we could make. But we're gonna go with this improvement first, and then reevaluate afterwards. And then Ryan, you can maybe provide my email address, or I can provide the link to all the attendees in terms of our traffic calming program, and you guys see the process, and you can resubmit in the future, next year possibly, once this study is completed.
All right, I'm punching Bertrand's email address into the chat, and there's a tenet of transportation engineering known as the tunnel effect, and we do see that when lanes get narrower, when corridors get narrower, the motorists tend to overwhelmingly drive slower. And it's something we see again and again. We've observed it most recently on 99. You can see us putting the tunnel effect into play right there, but when we install those medians, and I don't think we have any official studies yet, but just anecdotally, when I drive on 99, especially in that far left lane, folks are moving a lot slower than they did before, and the lane width didn't really change. It's just the presence of that additional physical object making you feel constricted, and that's what we want. We want folks driving slower and making better decisions.
Let's just add to that, Ryan, in terms of a recent project on Bedoin, same thing. There was a 20-foot travel lane and we added bike lanes and we narrowed the length significantly. And we don't have exact results yet, but we've already noticed a significant reduction in speeds.
Yeah, and I'll vouch for that. I live on that route, and cards on the table. I'm a fast driver, and I don't drive fast on Bedoin anymore. It's noticeable. It looks like we're losing people. Laura, did you have any follow-up questions?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I forgot to
Yeah.
lower my.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming out tonight. And we're going to go ahead and talk to Linda here. Linda Fireman. Oh, hold on. Sorry, Linda. I brought you up and then I booted you. My apologies for the confusion. Linda, how can we help you tonight? Linda might be having audio problems. Let's let her figure that out while we go to Dennis. All right. Oh, Denise, my apologies. Denise, how can we help you tonight?
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for presenting tonight. And first of all, we live at the house that has the big tree on 8th and Main, and we're very grateful that we're saving the tree. And we moved in 4 years ago and worked with the city to trim it, et cetera. So we're very happy about that. So thank you so much. One question about at 8th and Main, there are the flag holders for the traffic crossing. Will that remain or something similar be there as well? Right there at that corner with Anderson Park and 8th and Main.
Bertrand, are those flags going to remain? I haven't heard of any plans to remove them.
That's correct. Those would remain at that location.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
And Denise, my sincerest apologies. I actually thought of you just a couple of hours ago. I was part of that group of city employees who met you out in the field a few years ago.
Yes.
And it wasn't until this afternoon that I thought, oh, I have to reach out to that resident. I'm going to be so embarrassed if she shows up tonight and I hadn't talked to her first. So I'll apologize here in front of everybody. I should have reached out to you directly, but we were thinking of you the whole time.
Thank you so much.
To save that tree.
Yeah, we love the tree. We just love working with the city and having us save that tree. It means so much to us and the neighbors here. And we're just grateful that it's thriving and growing and continuing to grow as an elm tree here at this corner. So
yeah,
thank you.
It sure looks great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. All right, let's try Linda again and see if she was able to figure out her audio problems. Well, Linda, I'm not sure if we're going to... Oh, was that you? Yeah, you might have to email your question in. I'm sorry. Or are you able to put it in the chat? Hold on just a moment. looks like we have another hand up from Laura.
I would just
Hello,
want to
Laura.
let you know that the chat is disabled.
Oh, the chat is disabled. Well, that
Yeah.
is not great.
Okay.
All right. So no. All right, Linda. I'm really sorry, but we're just gonna have to have you email your question in. All right, unless anyone else has any questions, I think we're gonna go ahead and adjourn. Really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Public involvement really helps us. It helps us make our projects work for everybody. And it's always, for us as public servants, a little bit distressing when we hold a public meeting and one person shows up or nobody shows up. That obviously is not the case this evening. And we're going to have an extended period for public comment. Go to the website, learn more about that, watch the video. If anything jumps in your mind, go ahead and ask the question. That's what we're here for. So one last time, thank you all so much for your time and have a good evening.